Hello, everyone, and very good evening to the people who have joined with us from India, and very good morning to the people who have joined from Paraguay and other Latin American countries. Today, we are going to conduct our sixth interview in our ongoing interview series. The series is titled as Shades of Green. We've been talking to various practicing architects and organizations regarding the various sustainable design and material approaches with respect to architecture and design field. Today, we are going to talk to a very fascinating young architect from Paraguay, and his name is Horacio Cherniavsky. Horacio, welcome to this interview series.
Thank you for the invitation.
Before I hand it over to Horacio for his presentation, please allow me to introduce him and his practice. He runs his architecture firm from the city of Asunción, that is the capital city of Paraguay, and the firm name is Equipo de Arquitectura. Equipo de Arquitectura is an Asunción-based office run by Horacio Cherniavsky and Viviana Pozzoli. They have received numerous awards in national and international competitions. Their office, uh, which is Earthbox, received the 2019 Frame Award for Small Office of the Year and was selected as finalist at the 2018 Bienal de Arquitectura de Quito. They have been selected for the 2019 Bienal de Arquitectura Latinoamericana, celebrated in Pamplona, Spain, as one of the 14 studios of emerging architects chosen to expose their work at the event. They are currently working on small and medium scale projects and dedicate part of their time to teaching at both public and public universities. The today's title of the talk that Horacio has chosen is Down to Earth, and Down to Earth is basically an insight of the work and the philosophy of Equipo de Arquitectura. The today's talk aims to review the elements that revolve around Paraguayan architecture and the relevance of this collective attitude towards the profession. Horacio, this sounds for a very exciting presentation, and I would like to hand it over to you. Can we please have your presentation?
Thank you. Thank you. Again, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the invitation.
Welcome.
I will start sharing my screen. Okay. So what you see up there is our second official language, which is Guarani. And Baeshapa is hello in Guarani. I will give a brief history of where I come from, just to get a glimpse and why we do what we do. We're located in the center of South America. We've always had a condition of isolation regarding the exterior world. And we've had a lot of influences throughout time that affected our country. This is the Guarani people, which is the indigenous different tribes that lived in the area. And since they were nomadic, they didn't develop architecture. So they had a type of architecture that went along with their style of life, which was nomadic, but they didn't develop a built tradition of architecture. So what we inherited from them was their language, some practices, and other identities. So we live in Asunción, the capital of Paraguay, which is located there in the circle. It's where the fort of Asunción was funded in 1537 by the Spanish conquerors. And since then, it's been a hub for all the region. This is an image of how Asunción urban area looked in 1786. And it looked very organic. And that changed abruptly once the dictator of the beginning of the 19th century went to France and saw the urban design, and he wanted to import that model to the city with the big axis, straight lines, and another urban image that did not go along with the one that existed. So importing a wrong model is what today we still see as an urban problem because of the rainfall, and because it's a wrong model that did not go along with the existing topography. We like this frame of peanuts that you see Lucy looking at supposedly a butterfly, but it's not a butterfly, it's a potato chip. So in the end, she says, well, how did a potato chip go all the way from Brazil? And this is just a reminder that wrong assumptions normally generate the wrong questions. And that's something that we like to think about in the studio. This is Asunción and the urban sprawl, the metropolitan region. 550,000 people live in Asunción, but 2.5 million people use Asunción during the day. And those 2 million people live in the outskirts of the city. These are some images of old Asunción, the historic center. And we've always imported different styles of architecture. As you can see, this resemble an Italian neo-Gothic, neoclassic style. That resembles a French neoclassic style. So we've always imported different styles because we did not have an architectural tradition here. This is a drawing by Le Corbusier when he comes to Paraguay. He only stays here for a day. And he says that what caught his attention was that nobody knew him here when he came. And that represents a little bit our isolated universe that we had here. And this drawing depicts two chiperas, which is the ladies that sell a traditional bread. It's like a cheese bread that's very traditional, and that's an inheritance from the Guaraníes. So you see like a rural landscape behind. And we've always imported the wrong models. We've always imported images that do not go along with our reality here in Paraguay. This is what people call here progress. This glass buildings in a city that has 46 or 48 or 53 degrees Celsius during the summer. So if you look at it carefully, it's not very logical to build the way we build here. It does not go along with our climate. It does not go along with the culture, with the reality that we have here. And we have we don't have earthquakes. We don't have tsunamis because we're Mediterranean. We don't have tornadoes. We have extreme heat and politicians. Those are our two main problems here. So I will enter the architecture realm right now, and I want to just give a brief view of the references we have from the studio. All of this international and the media attention that Paraguay has right now is something that came up in the last 20 years with the architectures of Solano Benítez, Javier Corbalán, Luis Elgue, José Tocubilla, whom I worked with, Sergio Fanego, Sergio Ruggeri, TDA, Miguel Duarte, Sonia Carísimo y Francisco Tomboli, Lucas Fuster. And these are some generations of architects that belong to a group of friends and colleagues that find themselves in the academic sphere, teaching at the public university. So we belong somehow to that group and train of thought that started 20 or years ago. This is an image of Asunción and the coast, the river. And there's a small point in the image that it's like a rock formation. But if you look at it carefully, it's earth compacted with the years and years, and it's what time compacted. So that material logic is what we see as appropriate for our buildings. And we like to look and learn from vernacular buildings and architecture without architects, like Bernard Rudowski put it 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Because there's a lot of understanding of local materials, local resources, and we find that this type of construction is sustainable because it uses what it has in its context, with knowledge, with tradition, and it's way more careful than some of the constructions we see nowadays. So we tend to study this type of constructions that incorporated long ago concepts that now we see as sustainable or green architecture, for example, green roofs, earth walls, cross ventilation, all of the techniques we celebrate today as conscious architecture are long ago incorporated in traditional buildings all around the world. So we tend to study and learn more from these type of buildings than buildings that get published in architecture books. So we started out with our office, the Earthbox. We had a small place in a terrain that belongs to my family, and we decided to put our office there. And it's a small square in the floor plan. It's a small square of 45 square meters that is like a spiral. And as you see, the spiral is what configures the spaces. And they go along an inside tree and an outside tree. Inside tree is a way to live in the inside, and we have another tree which we have a relation from the inside, but it's on the outside. The building techniques we use earth walls that we built like this. And we added 5% of cement to the earth. As you can see, the earth and the cement are very fine. And they have to be a little bit humid. So we used this pistons, pneumatic pistons, to compress the earth. That's the construction process. And that was our first wall. Building process. And those were the 4 workers that built the office. We like to give credit to them. So this is how the space looked like once the light came in, and we need to speak about shadow in order to speak about light. And if we speak about cool places, which are places that we need here because of our climate, then we still need a little bit of light. Natural light. So we decided to do this opening. That's what I said that is related to the tree that's outside. And we normally look outside of architecture because we find a lot of references for the work we do, and we find a lot of inspiration for what we have to do. So Eduardo Chillida is a Spanish sculptor, which we admire a lot, and it's always been a reference for us. The idea of the sculpture of space with matter and light is something so fundamental that we're tied to that type of thinking. So these are the images of the finished project. All of the shadows give the texture life with the natural light and the glow. those are images of the inside. We can or you never feel that you are in the inside of a closed space. You can open those windows, those glass doors. For the crown, and the library is hanging from the roof, and it's not touching the roof. And space logic, we a childcare center in the outskirts of Asunción, in a city nearby, which is an industrial city, or it's beginning to become an industrial city. And these are some images of the context we have in the rural area near Asunción. We see a lot of this matter that we like to see it as once it was flat, and now because of the architecture we create is in its vertical form. So it's the same matter, it's the same material you see laying down that we use for the construction of this building. Those are the textures we have with the same building technique, and I have to say that it's a building technique that's been around civilization for thousands of years, but because of some building styles or technologies, it's been left behind and seen as something too old or too traditional to be used in modern buildings. But we see it differently, and we see this building technique as very appropriate for the weather we have here. And aside from that, the texture and the information the material has, it transmits a lot of benefits for the user. Not only climate, not only a comfort, an inside comfort, but also aesthetically and philosophically and so this is the floor plan of the project, and as you can see, the walls are the lines that create the space. So from the outside, you see it as a closed bunker with not a lot of information, but like a protection and shadow. But once you go on the inside, you see light, and you see the carved spaces that I talked about. This building is still in construction. We're almost done. And you have inner patios that ventilate all of the spaces. You have shadow. We're starting to have green inside. So it's a space it's a protected space of shadow, but also of light and green. All of these are patios. And from the outside, it's almost like a bunker, protected from the heat that we have here. And the section shows that we have green roofs, which also protect from the weather here. And it's a very simple construction where the roof is laying on top of the walls on top of the foundation, and there's nothing much more than that. And continuing with the use of earth, we also are starting to make bricks for another project. And I like this image because it shows a little bit of the essence of work here in Paraguay. What you see there on the left side of the image, on top of one of the bricks, is tereré. Tereré is a traditional drink we have inherited from the Guaraníes, which is a cold. It's cold water with herbs, yerba mate. So it's very refreshing, and it also gives you a pump of energy to work. So this is how we're using a Simba Ram, which is it's a machine that's been created in the mid 1950s, I think. It was patented like 50 or 60 years ago, and we're adding 10% of cement, a little bit more than the rammed earth walls, because the module is smaller and it needs a little bit more of coherence. Adherence, sorry. So we're using earth also as a module to build walls and vaults. That's the brick. And we're doing ceramic vaults with half of that brick. For the walls, we use the brick in its entirety, and for the vaults, we use half of the brick in order to build like this and have a thinner vault. This is a project we're building right now, and it's starting to look like this. It's a small house in Asunción, and those are the vaults with the earth bricks, compressed earth blocks. And we like I said, we normally like to see or the references we use in the office are artists or builders or architects that are normally very related manually to the work they make. Jorge Oteiza, sculptor, Constant Neuenhuis in his workshop, John Utzon building his own house in Mallorca, or Frei Otto in his always testing his own ideas. So these are some of the references we like because they are very related to the work they do manually and they live in the spaces they create. So it's something we normally tend to look at in the office. And that relation with materials, we are surrounded by materials, but we as the architect must look at them differently. And these are images of materials found in Asunción near the landfill area. And these are the materials that we can use for construction. This is an image by Tim Noble and Sue Webster, a piece by them. These artists, what they do is they assemble these figures, and by casting light upon them, you see this shadow, which you would normally see. You would not normally see that figure in materials that we tend to look at, like garbage or things that we would normally not use for construction. So with that logic, for a bar, we recycled all of the material. This is the intervention we did for an existing construction on the site. We integrated spaces by throwing down walls, throwing down pillars, in order to have a bigger and more open space. And with the materials, this is the floor plan after we did the intervention. And with all of the material that we started breaking, we started to construct the walls that look like this. And from the outside, we used construction materials, such as the scaffolding and local artisanry, like the plant pots, ceramic pots. This is a west side facade, so we have to protect from the sun, and we used green with traditional ceramic pots. So the construction phase is impregnated in the whole project. It looks like a building site, basically. And we used also the tiles, roof, the roof tiles to build the bar. So waste is also now seen as a construction material. I will show this is the only house we have built. And it's a house that is related to the patios that go between each space. So it's 3 pavilions connected by one side. It's connected by a circulation connection, and these are images of the construction phase where we normally use the materials and that look like, for example, the concrete. We leave the wood form impregnated there, so you see the construction process in the final built project. Ceramic vaults. All of the materials we use are materials that you find locally, and these are images of the in between patios. These are images of the final built project, and as you see, these patios are the spaces in between the pavilions that tend to ventilate and give life to the inside of the house. We recollect the water from the roof. These are images of the inside. The decoration is not part of the project, but this image shows that being in the inside, by opening all of the windows, you can feel as you're in the outside. And you always have that connection to the patios and the outside and the green and the water. And the same way we built these filters, which are filters for protection, sun protection. You can see the images I showed before of those same filters that you see in constructions everywhere here, not built by architects, but built with a certain logic that responds to our climate and our reality here. These are some offices that also correspond to the same scheme that we did in the house, which is inner patios, in between patios. And it's a small office where you have this in-between spaces of shadow and light. So the office space is never a closed cold space. It's always, for us, an open space related to nature, that has natural ventilation, natural light, and you find this spaces where you can encounter other people and talk and drink and be outside. Natural light, natural materials. And the materials we use are always the same materials we use in every project: wood, concrete, bricks, some metal, earth. Also, the protection from this facade is protecting the inside because it's towards the west. This project is an international competition we won like 3 years ago, and it's just finished building last year. And what we had was this old building, and the competition wanted to have a new temple for the Jewish community, a new synagogue. And we decided to leave some parts of the existing building, the structure, the roof, or parts of the roof, but transform that construction in order to give a new space identity and a new image. This is a floor plan where that was the existing part of the building, and this is what we added in the floor plan. But in a section, you can see that that's the parts we added, and those are the skylights we added also, in order to give natural light to the inside. So that's the existing building. What we do is we modify the structure in order to have the skylights. We add a new corridor on the outside. We add that outer shell, the protection, and the new roof. That's part of the modifications we did for the structure. And those are images of the construction phase where you can see the natural light as the protagonist of the inside. These are images of the finished construction. And that's how it looks from the outside. You have an outer shell of concrete and metal that gives a fortified image of the inside. And you have these sequences of spaces before you get to the inside. You have this first corridor. Then you have the second corridor where you have more silence and you get prepared to get inside the building. And this corridor has natural light now, and it has other materials. The inside had concrete and metal, which are very tough and cold materials. And then as you go inside, you have wood and natural light that give you another atmosphere. And on the inside, you have a space of shadow, but where the natural light is the protagonist. So trying to separate the elements, walls are separated from the roof, and you have this skylights in between the existing structure. You can close that space and divide the temple in two in order to have two separate spaces for other events. And during the night, this looks like a small lamp. This is a building we're finishing now. It was also a national competition that we won. And instead of building one big new building, we decided to build two buildings that are connected by one ramp in the middle that is related to a tree that existed there. This is a floor plan where you see the two pavilions and the ramp in between them and the tree in the middle. So these are some images just from my cell phone of the building, how it looks. Last Saturday we went there to make the official photo shoot. So that's gonna be done by next week. These are our photos just by my cell phone. And as you can see, the building creates this protection from the sun, this brise soleil. It's a ceramic brise soleil. So all the classrooms have glass and a relation towards the outside. This is an image of the ramp in the last level, and how we have this protection also from the sun, but letting the natural sunlight. This is the ramp. And we wanted to give the classes, we wanted to give an open view towards the outside, but always protecting from the sun and the weather. And since we don't have a lot of technological developments here, we decided to create this brise soleil in an artisanry way, craftsmanship, using local craftsmanship and local materials. This is how the building looks with the context surrounding it. And this is the last project I show, which is an event that is celebrated in Argentina. It's an international event. It's a workshop where every year they call for project entries as a competition, and they select 10 projects which are going to be built in 1 week, which is what the event lasts. So we got selected as one of the projects, and we decided all of the projects have to be built with the wood they provide, and they provide a certain amount of material, and you have to build with that material. So we decided not to cut or modify any of the elements that they give in the materials you have to use, and we decided to create the biggest possible space with the material they provide. So that's why we used, that's why we created this 2 pavilions and this big roof on top that creates this open space but protected space. So these are images of the final construction. It's a really big space that could be used for a public space or public program. This was built with 12 students and the team in 1 week. And as you can see, all of the elements are used in its entirety. This type of exercises are material exercises that for us are very important. Thank you. Awije is thank you in Guarani.
Yes, Horacio, we'll have to stop sharing your screen. Thank you so much, Horacio. I think it was quite interesting to see the range of materials and the range of technologies, and with the kind of concerns with which you have been working. It was great to see it, all of that getting reflected in your work. And somewhere in the beginning of your presentation, you said, that when we talk about the Paraguay, the two biggest problems are heat and politicians. And let me tell you, it's quite similar here in India as well. But we have to deal with both of them. I mean, as architects, we deal with heat. Politicians, we leave it up to the democracy. So, but yet, I think when I look at and I'm trying to understand the range of things that you have been doing. So, on one hand, when you started your presentation with the context of the Paraguay, with the indigenous people, their background, their kind of lifestyle, their kind of vernacular architecture. So there is that one part of that. On the other hand, there is the colonial architecture that came in the 15th century and then the later on. So there is a struggle to find what exactly defines that, a Paraguayan architecture. So there is a search for that, and that is something that you are constantly trying to find it in all your projects. So on one hand, that is something that is going on, and on the other hand, of course, there are concerns related to climate, concerns related to the materials and the local skills. Uh, uh, Let me come to the first part, which is where you say that you're trying to find a contemporary uh, solution, a contemporary approach to Paraguayan architecture through certain elements. What exactly are these elements? Do you draw them from the vernacular? Do you draw them more from the colonial architecture? So where exactly do you find the balance?
I think that if we have something in common with vernacular architecture or the way that Paraguayan architecture has been built for the last 20 years, on the examples that I've shown on the presentation, what we have in common is a certain logic that goes along with the local reality, and that is the materials we use, the protection from the climate that we have, the resources for every project, and all of that creates a certain identity that is way before than the decision to look like a certain way. What I'm trying to say is that the way we're building, and the way that the architectural representatives have been building for the last 20 years, or the way that vernacular architecture looks like, they have in common all of these logics. They have in common reason, and they have in common a certain truth that goes way beyond than any style or trend or technology that is new or something. I'm not trying to say that we reject certain technologies. I'm trying to say that certain technologies are not available or are not accessible for us. It doesn't mean that we reject or we're against certain technologies or certain ways of building. Is that it's those technologies or those ways of building are not accessible for our clients, for our weather, for our reality here. So that's how this architectural identity has been built for some time now. It has to do with that logic and way of thinking.
Yeah, I get it. I think in your earlier presentation also you showed when you were talking about the history of the city of the Asunción, when it started with the Spanish colonization, and they established certain institutions in, let's say, somewhere around the 15th century you mentioned. But then later on, I think down the line in 18th century or some, when people started putting things in a certain kind of an imported order, with a certain kind of images that do not belong to that particular place, that is when actually you started facing the problem as a city. And that is exactly what you are saying, that I'm not interested in doing. I'm not interested in the images, or I'm not interested in creating the visual identity that belongs to a Paraguayan, let's say so-called Paraguayan architecture, but something that is rooted very much in the logic of that people have been doing for centuries, and that is essentially what you're trying to do. And I think that makes uh, I'm looking at the was looking at the climate of the Paraguayan, and the way I understood it, it's more or less tropical, equatorial kind of a climate, which is with a lot of rainfall and essentially a lot of humidity. It's a kind of a subtropical climate, if not exactly tropical climate. Uh, so now we could see a lot of ways in which you are trying to deal with the climate. And one is that you are trying to create the screens, you are through what are the ways in which you try to negotiate this problem of the heat in your buildings. For example,
Well, like I said, for example, no, just finish what you wanted to say.
no, I look at some of the
Um,
plans. Sorry, Horacio, please.
no. Go ahead,
So
please.
I was looking at some of the plans of the houses, and also the later projects that you showed, and the plan organizations are pretty much simple in that sense that there are rooms and then there are patios in between. And then these patios, the rooms have really huge openings, and when you open those, the rooms literally become pavilions for allowing you to cross ventilation. Now, when I look at it, and that I found that strategy to be almost repetitive in many couple of your projects that you showed.
Mhm.
So now these decisions come from the climate, and as you're saying, from the logic. What are other such drivers of the design?
What is very traditional here is the open space, but a roof space. Vernacular constructions here have social spaces, open but with a roof. So the verandas, the galleries, all of the open protected spaces are very traditional, and they are part of the identity of the lifestyle here. People here normally like to do outside barbecues, outside meetings, social gatherings, and they are normally on the outside, but with a protection. So, trying to build an open space that could be closed and protected is something obviously that repeats in all of our projects because of the tradition of being in a protected but open space. I think that all of the countries and the cultures that have this humid heat tend to be open and ventilated, like certain parts of India or just like all of the South American region, except Chile and some parts of Argentina. But we have a semi-tropical weather, so we must have shadow, cross ventilation, some presence of water, and that's why we build those type of spaces.
So basically, what you're talking about
And
is
always with a relation, sorry, always with a relation to vegetation, because also vegetation also gives shadow, and it provides oxygen and a certain relation that constructs an atmosphere.
yeah, no. So what I was saying is that what you're talking about is a kind of a layering of the spaces that you need. So you have the inside spaces, and then you have the semi-open spaces. There's a layer of these verandas and all kinds of spaces which actually protect you from the open. And then you have this series of patios, which are also sort of a kind of enclosed spaces where you can they serve as extension to your rooms. So this in a way promotes cross ventilation. Uh, Let me ask you about there's a question that we having regarding the passive cooling. You know, uh, there are many contemporary architects who've been using the passive cooling systems, passive cooling technologies with respect to the wind, etc. So, have you been exploring those kind of technologies also, systems in any of your projects?
Wind related technologies, not really. Only the consideration of how we the how we orient the spaces regarding the sun and regarding the rain and regarding the winds. So how we orient spaces is a passive way of creating inside comfort.
Yeah, I'll come back to the materials and the craftsman, the part that you have been working, and the kind of work that you have been doing. Is not a conventional. We are many times we call it alternative technologies, etc. And it demands a kind of a different approach to architectural practice with the kind of a people. There are different kinds of people we have been talking to in this series, and some people have taken the approach of entrepreneurship, and they say that okay, we are not only architects, but we are essentially a master craftsman kind of a thing. So they develop their own team of masons. They have their own workshop, and they don't just design, but they design and also get into very much into the execution. you know and with the kind of technologies that we are talking about, some kind of an involvement with the material is always demanded. What is your model of practice?
We normally build our projects, so most of the projects you've seen that do not correspond with a competition or a big institutional project are built by us, and that's why I showed the images of the master builders, master workers, the architect in its workshop, building with its own hands. We like to see the construction as part of the creative process, and many of the times we change the project during the construction phase, not substantially, but some details. So we are very related to the construction process, and most of the projects we try to build to have not only the control of the details, but to have that close relation with some of the materials. For example, the rammed earth walls that are a construction technique that is not very well known here. Brick, the brick construction is also very. You have to be very on top of every detail. So we like to be close to the construction phase. And that is also something that identifies Paraguayan architecture, is that normally here the architects are the ones that build their own projects. So you see a close relation of the project and the architect with the construction phase, the construction materials, the construction workers. There is an intricate relation between them, and that's something that is very that identifies a lot of our architecture.
So you develop your own team of masons and helpers, and that is how you get things done. That's quite. And also the question that comes along with that is that the rammed earth, traditionally, yes, of course, it has been done since thousands of years. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But when I build a contemporary house using rammed earth as a material, there's a kind of trained technique, trained masons and trained helpers, that I need to have. So, and it's a special kind of a construction versus, what a typical mason might not be able to do. So, do you have these kind of organizations who where these people are trained, or how do you find and train these craftsmen?
You start training them, and we're not the only ones building with this technique. Actually, there are a few architects that are also building with this technique. So since we are a very small circle of colleagues and architect friends, we share knowledge, we share experiences, and I go to their construction sites, they come to our construction sites, and that's how knowledge is transpassed, and that's how knowledge is built. We share everything here, and workers are always being they're always improving their capacities, and it's a small circle of architects and workers.
So it's a kind of a network of people, who are like-minded, concerned people who are trying to sort of keep
Yes,
this thing alive by applying it in their own projects.
exactly,
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
absolutely.
Fantastic to hear that, Horacio. It was very nice to talk to you. It was fantastic presentation, and I'm really thankful to you that you agreed for this presentation. And it was really nice to see a lot of the work that you have shared. Fantastic. Some of the work have also been publishing on our platform, and you've been sharing with us. So thank you so much for that. and I hope that again sometime in future we'll again meet and have a look at have a chat on some other things as well. So I'd like to sort of conclude this talk here with a small announcement that next Saturday is going to be our seventh interview in this series, and next Saturday we are going to have the interview at our conventional time, which is 11 a.m. in the morning Indian Standard Time. And next Saturday we are going to talk to a very another young fascinating architect from Kerala, India, and his name is Vinu Daniel. So please do join us next Saturday 11 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Till then, thank you so much. Goodbye, Horacio.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you so much.